Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Zimmerman with Becker's Healthcare. Thank you for tuning into the Becker's Healthcare podcast series. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Mike O'Neill, Chief Executive Officer of MedicaSoft. Mike is a leader of high-performance teams in healthcare IT, hardware, software, and systems applications. He holds a Master's of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from Virginia Tech. Mike, thanks for being here.
It's great to be here.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. We're talking about consolidation today. So, what are some of the health IT considerations for healthcare providers to keep in mind as they undergo a consolidation?
Sure. Well, first, we definitely have seen a variety of consolidations in the provider space in the last few years, from mergers of hospital networks, the acquisition of primary care practices, specialty practice roll-ups, and so forth. And there's always in these kind of consolidations a traditional kind of IT challenges of how you're going to consolidate administrative capabilities, financial, supply chain. From a health IT point of view, really, we usually end up zeroing in a couple of areas. One is in how you're delivering care, things that are provider facing. And the biggest thing there is typically the EHR, but it's really everything that you need to allow you to deliver care. Patient facing applications are increasingly an important thing. It's often linked to the EHR, although that's starting to evolve a little bit. And then a general category that you might just say is analytics, whether it's population health or risk assessment or whatever. That's another area that needs to be dealt with, which kind of brings me to another consideration that I think these days gets more and more attention, which is how am I consolidating the data that underpins these areas?
Yeah, fascinating. You laid out a lot of stuff there: data, EHR, some really important considerations. But which are the most critical to address to ensure that a consolidation goes smoothly?
Well, you could almost, if you ask people, you'd say that every one of those considerations is a challenge unto itself. But I think of it, and we tend to think of it here at MedicaSoft, that the data strategy itself is really key, and particularly these days. Most often in a consolidation, the parties are looking to improve outcomes, improve the way they deliver care, and typically to improve efficiency in one way or another. And so you end up thinking about care delivery from a data point of view. That means, am I assembling the very best, most complete longitudinal patient record that I can? And am I putting that information in front of clinicians at the time and place that they need it for care? So that's really a data story to improve your ability to deliver care. On the analytics side, and I should say whether analytics is very broad, whether that really means things like reporting, enterprise level reporting, all the way through predictive analytics and things that you might do even in the AI space. In a consolidation, now you're typically trying to tackle, how can I bring all of this data that I now should have access to drive my analytics? How am I able to bring that together in a form, in a place where I can actually operate on it? So even though, as I said, you could say from a health IT point of view, every piece is critical. You can't say I can have one and not the other. Really, if you look at it, if you are able to do the data consolidation in a good way, you're going to make the applications more effective.
It makes a lot of sense. I want to drill down here and ask you about some of the work your organization is specifically doing. So, can we talk about the work you're doing on large EHR migrations, like the VA's current EHR modernization project? What are the most important pitfalls to watch out for when undertaking a project like that? Just thinking about the types of transitions that can arise during provider consolidation. I mean, I just think there's so many different little things that go into a process that big. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I can. I mean, we at MedicaSoft, I consider that it's a privilege that we're able to be a part of the team that's working on such really an important modernization effort at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and actually this includes the Department of Defense as well, who's been undertaking EHR modernization. One of the things that became very clear, I think, in a VA DoD, if I can use the acronyms, joint effort, is that policy often becomes as important as the technology that underlies it. And so that's both an opportunity and a pitfall. And, I think fortunately, both agencies, VA and DoD, recognized this early and put processes in place to deal with things that really need joint policy. And I think that translates to really any consolidation where you're bringing together different processes, even different cultures, to recognize that policies and standardization is important in order to make your technology deployment effective. And I would say, as a kind of a techie, policy doesn't always mean politics, doesn't mean nebulous factors. It can be very, very specific in things like cybersecurity. How are you actually going to implement cybersecurity across an enterprise that is comprised of different components that never used to work together? How are you standardizing so that all of your data is usable? These things have a technical element, of course, but they also have a policy element. And that's something that on a large EHR modernization program proves to be supremely important.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it just sounds like, you can't just have the technology alone isn't enough. You've got to set yourself up for success with putting those right policies in place and really thinking about that, not overlooking it. And policy, as you mentioned, as a techie, it's like, it's not, maybe that word has a little bit of baggage to it. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it's an important thing that folks have to focus on.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, to sort of just finish up here, I want to ask you if you could succinctly narrow it down, your health IT related advice. So what would you say to providers out there that are involved in consolidations? Sentence or two, what should they do?
If I had to be really concise, I would say, look, you absolutely need to manage that whole portfolio of applications in the consolidation, but get your data right. So the most concise thing that I could say, if you're able to get the data right, you will be able to get the most information and the most value out of that data. All of your application work becomes effective, and the inverse is true. If you aren't able to get your data right, you're always going to be limited in the effectiveness that your other systems can gain.
Get your data right. I mean, it doesn't get much more succinct than that. So Mike, I appreciate the time.
Thanks very much. It was a pleasure.
I'd also like to thank MedicaSoft for sponsoring today's conversation. To stay up to date on recent episodes and find more great podcasts, subscribe and check out our podcast page at beckershospitalreview.com.